Third reason, the peace treaty and regional reformation. The winning nations brought in a lot of regional change in the European continent through the Paris Peace Treaty. The pride of Germany was hurt because of the humiliating conditions imposed on it. Italy had the feeling of having deceived by the conquering nations, as assurances given to Italy were not fulfilled. Japan was also disappointed, being given inferior treatment in Paris. As a result of these developments arose the growth of aggressive nationalism. Fourth reason, the failure of the League of Nations. The League of Nations was set up with the intention of maintaining global peace through a sense of collective responsibility. However, there was no implementation of the resolution of collective security by the League. It couldn't curb the growing military nationalism. Thus, the hostile nations paid no attention to the decisions of the League of Nations. The weaker nations fell a victim to the aggressive nations. The adamant nations like Italy, Germany, and Japan made the condition of the League quite helpless. As these nations couldn't be tackled, the Second World War became unavoidable. Fifth reason, extreme nationalism and pursuit of weapons. The nationalist Europe gave rise to a feeling that if a nation was humiliated, it was everyone's insult, and it must be retaliated by sacrificing life. This began a stream of activities, bringing about secret agreements, false propaganda, rejecting resolutions, etc. Every nation was afraid of one another. The growing intensity of fear made these nations increase their military strength. There began a cutthroat competition of forging innovative weapons. In cooperation with the scientists and researchers, more and more destructive weapons were invented. In other words, Europe had become a den of arms and ammunition before the Second World War. The progress of the war. England and France declared a war against Germany, which attacked Poland in 1st September 1939. This started the Second World War in the European continent. America had been assisting the Allies by keeping neutral. America was forced into the war after its naval base at Pearl Harbor was attacked by Japan on 7th December 1941. Afterwards, France and England declared a war on Japan. In this manner, the war was not restricted to the periphery of Europe, but it had brought the entire world into its jaws. The war, which lasted 6 years, was fought on land, sea, and in air. The Second World War and the world. The Second World War began with Hitler's attack on Poland on 1st September 1939. In the first 2 years of the war, Hitler threatened the nations like England by conquering several nations at a lightning speed. Russia too was forced into the war by the German attack in June 1941. One side of the war was made of nations like Germany, Austria, Hungary, Italy, and Japan, and the other side consisted in France, England, and Russia. America is said to have been assisting France in the initial stage of the war. However, due to Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, America was also dragged into the war. The American entry in the battlefield was a turning point in the Second World War. The group of nations led by Germany began to lose ground, and on 30th April 1945, the suicidal death of Hitler was an acceptance of defeat of Germany and its allies. However, the American Air Force destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the two cities in Japan, in 1945. Japan had to surrender, and the war that lasted 6 years came to an end. Hitler in power. Adolf Hitler increased the popularity of the Nazi Party by giving assurances, ensuring the property of the middle-class people, saving the educated, and capitalists from the clutches of communism, jobs for the jobless, and enhancement of the nation through patriotism. The Nazi Party won several seats in German parliament in the March 1933 elections. Hitler wanted total power. Within few months, elections were announced, and Hitler, having put down all the opponents, grabbed a huge majority. On the basis of this majority, Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany in 1933. In the following year, Hitler assumed the posts of Prime Minister and President of Germany. He set up a centralized government by dissolving the federal status of Germany. Thus, Adolf Hitler became the dictator of Germany. Hitler's internal policy. Right from the day of grabbing power, Hitler had decided to convert Germany into a Nazi nation. He got rid of his opponents by using his spies. The academic curriculum in Germany was deprived of writings of communism, socialism, and fascism. There began at all levels of education a systematic edification in Adolf Hitler and Nazism. The press was made to admire Nazism and Adolf Hitler. Hitler's orders were considered to be compulsory. The Nazi Party had the loyal members of Hitler. Strikes and lockouts were declared illegal. The owners of the industries were not allowed to shut down. The Nazi government would have the final decision in the disputes between the workers and the owners. In 1934, Hitler introduced Fourth Annual Plan. Modern technology improved seeds and use of chemical fertilizer increased in agriculture. Hitler Youth was encouraged for agriculture. Hitler gained success in producing artificial fiber, rubber, and petrol by using chemicals on coal and wood. Lakhs of Jews were killed. Hitler adopted several economic reforms. Agricultural production was increased. The scientific and industrial research were given a stimulus. The external policy of Hitler. After reforming Germany internally, Hitler began to play an aggressive role in the European politics. His aim was to acquire Germany an important place in the world politics. According to Hitler, the Versailles Treaty was only a scrap roll of paper, and hence it was unacceptable. Setting aside the resolutions of the treaty, Hitler made military education compulsory in Germany. The strength of the army and navy was increased and the air force was built. He manufactured advanced arms and ammunition. In order to carry on the aggressive military program, Hitler quit the League of Nations in 1934. There was increased domination of the Nazi Party in the Saar province, and it was annexed by Germany. the German forces entered into the civilian region near the Rhine River, and it was captured by Germany. In order to strengthen the anti-communist forces in the European continent, Hitler brought out an agreement with Italy and Japan in 1937. This was called the Berlin-Rome-Tokyo Agreement. Hitler motivated extreme nationalism and militarism by using this tri-national agreement. The consequences of the First World War was the seed for the Second World War. Nazism of Adolf Hitler. Hitler was born in a middle-class family in the year 1889. He couldn't get education since his parents died untimely. He did the job of painting houses when the First World War broke out. Later on, he was enrolled in the German military. He was honored for his bravery at the battlefield. After the war was over, he lost the job of soldier. He collected like-minded persons to form the National Socialist Allies, Nazi Party, in 1920. The ideology of Adolf Hitler was identified as Nazism. Adolf Hitler published Mein Kampf, that is, My Fight, an autobiography which propagated his political philosophy. Hitler was extremely angry with the Weimar Republic. He criticized the Weimar Republic as anti-German for having signed the humiliating Versailles Treaty. Such a collaborative government couldn't realize the welfare of the German people. Hitler reiterated. He believed in extreme nationalism. His ambition was to make Germany the strongest of all the nations in the world. He taught the German citizens a lesson of sacrifice for the sake of their nation. It was his faith that the Germans were of Aryan race and they were born to rule the people belonging to other inferior races. There were Jew people too in Germany. Hitler began to spread a theory that Germany had to face defeat in the First World War due to the Jewish people and their treachery, since he believed that Jews were a non-Aryan race. He was bent upon driving the Jewish people from Germany. He came out with an announcement that Germany must show its military power to the world. The communist people in Germany deserved death, since they were traitors. Hitler knew that a war woke up the potential power in people. Hence, his theory of one nation, one voice, one leader, and one flag. He believed himself to be a leader as great as Mussolini. To him, Germany was a god, made nation. He was divinely appointed leader of the nation, and it was divine order that Germany should rule the world. Thus, the minds of the Germans were ignited by Hitler. Obviously, the much tormented people in Germany looked up to Hitler as the liberator. Rise of Nazism in Germany. After the German Emperor gave up the throne in the wake of the First World War, a republic government was formed in November 1918 in Germany. As the constitution of this new government was formed in Weimar, it was declared as Weimar Republic. Weimar Constitution was the first written constitution of Germany. This constitution conferred upon the equal voting rights to both men and women, and also gave the right to suggest the clauses and to recall the representatives. It was the Weimar Republic which agreed to disregard the Versailles Treaty. As a consequence, the common people in Germany and the armed forces were irritated at the Weimar government. This government failed to improve the declining conditions in Germany, which were caused because of the war and the Versailles Treaty. To make the matters worse, the conditions in Germany went from bad to worse. The common Germans were trodden under the burden of taxes. There was not a single political party in Germany which could take the nation out the doldrums. The Great Depression started in 1929, destroyed German economy, which was already under decline. Industrial and commercial activities came to a standstill. Banks ran out of funds, drowning deposits and causing price rise. In short, the life of the common people had become difficult. The Weimar government couldn't overcome the crisis. An ambitious Adolf Hitler took full advantage of this national situation in Germany. He appealed to German masses by means of the Nazi Party. For getting the people's support, Hitler undertook propaganda of the extreme political philosophy by giving provocative speeches all over Germany. Kemal Pasha, from 1881 to 1938. Mustafa Kemal Pasha was born in 1881 in the family of a wood seller. Having sought education at military school, Kemal Pasha became a soldier. He went on to become the commander of the armed forces, as he possessed leadership qualities. Kemal Pasha was a thinker of a modern philosophy. He had the opinion that Turkey should not participate in the First World War. However, Sultan turned a deaf ear and took the side of Germany in the war. The war witnessed the defeat of Turkey. In the year 1920, the Allied nations made an agreement with Turkey at Sivas. Kemal Pasha insisted Sultan Majid upon rejecting this agreement, but the Sultan was too timid to say no to the conquerors. Pasha decided to mobilize the Turkey soldiers for retaliation. The people of Turkey too supported Pasha's decision. Kemal Pasha drove the forces of the Allied nations by virtue of his war strategy. In 1923, a new treaty was signed with Kemal Pasha by the Allied nations. Before this event, Kemal Pasha had set up a new republic in Ankara by rising the revolt against the Sultan, and he became the chief of the nation. Reformations done by Kemal Pasha. Before Kemal Pasha's reign, Turkey was known as an Islamic nation. The Sultan had kept under his command the religious and political powers. When Kemal Pasha got power, he declared Turkey a secular nation. He began reforming the conservative and superstitious people of the nation with their dress code. He implemented modern dress code, registration of marriages, Sunday instead of Friday to be the holiday, and gave permission to women for education and jobs. The field of education was freed from the domination of religion, and there he brought modern education by virtue of various branches of science. He followed the Western judicial system in Turkey. The judges were appointed on merit. As Turkey was an agricultural nation, efforts were undertaken for the improvement in this field. Farmers were counseled at various agricultural colleges. They were given seeds and fertilizers by the government. Thus, Turkey became independent in terms of food grains. The political instability of Turkey was removed by Kemal Pasha by establishing People's Party. He saw an all-round development of the nation by involving appropriate persons in the governance and administration. He adopted a new foreign policy, which consisted in non-interference in the affairs of the European nations, non-alignment, and no involvement in armed conflicts. By dint of his policies, Turkey came forward as a modern nation. He was named as Ataturk, the father of the people of Turkey, because of the reformations he brought in. Kemal Pasha was the founder of modern Turkey. He died at the age of 58 in November 1938. The effects of the Second World War. In comparison with the First World War, the Second World War was fought on broader level. The war witnessed a large-scale use of lethal weapons like atom bombs and modern weapons, creating an adverse impact on the overall life of human beings. The thoughtless use of arms and ammunition caused long-term effects. Following is the list of effects caused by the Second World War. First, the great loss of life and property. The Second World War is said to have caused greater damage than what the First World War had done. During the 6 years of the war, 1.5 crore soldiers were killed at the battlefield. There was a big number of people who died or became injured and handicapped elsewhere. The war expenditure of all the nations went up to $1,517 billion. There was a great loss of public property. The war destroyed buildings, houses, agriculture, hospitals, industries, and dams, which caused an irreparable loss. Second, the financial effect. The economy of all the nations was damaged due to the great loss of life and wealth. The life of the common people was filled with troubles. Due to inflation, price rise, shortage, widespread diseases, drought, black marketing, and other adversities, the people were harassed. There was seen a huge scarcity of food, clothes, medicines, coal, and fuel. The condition of the common people was pitiable. Third, the moral degradation of man. Due to the terrorizing incidents during the war period, people's attitude towards life was entirely changed. There was a great shift in the attitude towards God, religion, and women. The issues of widows and orphans became critical. The bread earners of innumerable families died in the war. People at distant places would not get affected by the wars. However, the pangs of the Second World War were felt by the people far away from the actual places of fighting. The use of atom bombs caused an unforeseen human destruction. There began a spate of violence and atrocities all over the world. This moral degradation of man was going to be very destructive in the time to come. Third, dictatorship in Turkey. The democratic dictatorship set up in Turkey by Kemal Pasha in the year 1923 and was different from the despotic rules by Mussolini and Hitler. After becoming the first president, he declared elections after every 4 years. Kemal Pasha didn't adopt a suicidal policy, which was endeared by Hitler and Mussolini. He utilized his dictatorship for the benefit of modernization of his country. A new era rose in Turkey due to the reformative rule of Kemal Pasha. Fourth effect: the decline of imperialism. The empires of Germany, Italy and Japan were brought down because of their defeat in the Second World War. The imperial foundation of the winning nations too got weakened. Nevertheless, England and France tried their best to maintain their empires after the war was over. But these nations had lost a lot despite their victory. The two nations were not able to solve the problems of the people in their colonies. So, India, Sri Lanka and Indonesia in Asia and Egypt, Sudan, Libya in Africa got independence. Fifth, the onset of Cold War between America and Russia. After the Second World War, America couldn't afford to be as non-aligned as it had been before. America, before the Second World War, used to dabble in the affairs of Europe. However, in the post-Second World War period, America underwent a political change. As England and France gave up, America had to look after the welfare of the democracies in the European nations. The American participation in the world politics became compulsory, as Russia was emerging as the other powerful nation. While withdrawing from the Second World War, Russia had initiated several nations into communism. America had to take stance at the world level, since Russia had plans of forming a group of communist nations. Thus, there began a Cold War between the group of communist nations led by Russia and the democratic nations led by America. Sixth, the formation of United Nations Organization on 24th October 1945. The world came to realize how a war is destructive by seeing the great loss caused by the Second World War. It also meant that the way of resolving an international problem was not war, but coordination. The nations had an understanding that if another war broke out, nobody would left to taste the fruit of victory. There was a universal awareness that war would destroy the entire humanity. Hence, with the aims of resolving international issues through peaceful negotiations, establishing cooperation and coexistence, and maintaining global peace, a league-like international organization was set up on 24th October 1945. It was named United Nations Organization, UNO. Remember this: Mussolini was the son of an blacksmith in Italy. He founded the Fascist Party in 1919. Adolf Hitler, the leader of the Nazis, used to paint houses during the First World War. Kemal Pasha was born in a family of wood seller in Turkestan. His was a reformative dictatorship. The emperor, the general, the political parties, the military, the administration, and Zaibutsu were the centers of power in Japan. On 1st September 1939, Hitler attacked Poland and the Second World War began.